I've never had to prepare a D'Var before, and I must admit I was a bit terrified now that it's my turn. So I guess it's a good thing I have to record this, because I've double booked myself. I randomly picked a date partially through the year, figuring it would give me time to see what you all were doing. Lucky for me, I ended up with one of my favorite portions of the Torah, one I'm actually familiar with. My date fell on Parashat Vayishlach, where Jacob receives a new name that becomes the name of the Jewish people, Israel. Here's the Vayishlach in a nutshell. Jacob returns to his birthplace, the Holy Land, with his wives and children after living for decades in exile in Haran with his awful father-in-law Laban. He must pass through his twin brother Esau's land along the way. Now, he hasn't spoken to Esau in decades, and the last time they saw each other, Esau threatened to kill Jacob. And for good reason, because Jacob, whose name means supplanter, tricked Esau out of their father's dying blessing after convincing Esau to give up his right as firstborn in exchange for food. Jacob learns Esau is on his way to meet him with 400 armed men, so Jacob sends his brother gifts to try to appease him. If you think this sounds a little bit like a soap opera, so do I. Give it a modern-day polish and I think millions would tune in. Fearful of the meeting with his brother, he divides his family into two camps just in case his brother attacks, so one half can survive. I find this notion very Jewish, but anyway, his brother does not attack. And Jacob remains behind while his family crosses the river, and he meets an angel. Now, some say this angel is a messenger from God. Some say it was his actual brother, and some say it was a robber. Whatever it was, they wrestle all night long, and Jacob will not allow the angel to leave without giving him a blessing. The angel bestows on Jacob a new name, Israel, meaning he who wrestles with God. Now, having wrestled with the angel, Jacob is transformed and ready to meet his brother with humility. The two kiss and make up, but Jacob moves on. He buys land near Shechem. There, his daughter Dinah becomes entangled with the crown prince, and her brothers Simon and Levi avenge her by killing all of the males in the city. Did I say soap opera? Anyway, Jacob must flee from the devastated city, and his beloved wife Rachel dies giving birth to Benjamin near Bethlehem along the road. When Jacob finally arrives in Haran, his father Isaac dies. The Parsha ends with a recitation of Esau's family tree of descendants. Now, I've never read the entire Torah before. I have read some of the Old Testament in my college years, but reading it at that time was with a very different perspective than with a Reform Judaism lens. And I love this idea of wrestling with God. This is one of my favorite things about Judaism and something my head and heart completely identifies with. I was raised in an almost anti-religious household. When I was 5, I demanded my mom enroll me in Sunday school because all the other kids in the neighborhood were going. Now, it just took a couple of months for me to be kicked out for asking too many questions. And I have always struggled with the idea of God and what God means to me. The desire to question everything is ingrained in who I am. The Jewish notion of a soul is constantly in motion, according to Rabbi Sacks. Rabbi Sacks says, we are an unstable combination of dust of the earth and the breath of God. And I love this concept, that we are constantly making decisions to try and be better each day individually and collectively as Jews. So life is about the journey. Jacob, like most of us, has done some good things and some things he's regretted. His late-night battle with the representation of his brother, or maybe it was his actual brother in disguise, is a representation of this. In Judaism, we have to face the people we've wronged. This includes ourselves. We cannot ask God to forgive our wrongdoings. We must ask the person we've wronged. But I think before we can do this, we have to be ready to forgive ourselves for the wrong as well. Jacob's chance encounter with the angel, or his brother, is an existential battle. Wherever we focus our energy, this is where our greatest potential lies, and often our greatest fear. The next day, Jacob must face his brother, a big fear for him. But before he can do this with an open heart, he has to face his reprehensible actions from years before. Sometimes you have to study the past in order to move forward. In our busy modern lives, rarely do people take the time to truly look in the mirror and examine who we are and why we are walking on the path we're on. There are moments in life that force us to stop and examine who we are and where we want our journey to lead us. being on the eve of achieving a goal we worked long to attain, or about to go on a date to meet someone we've cared about but haven't seen in the many years, as is Jacob's case, or a severe illness in ourselves or a loved one, or the death of someone we love, all of these things can provoke such introspection. These moments, like for Jacob, stop us in our tracks and leave us staring into the mirror, questioning who we are and where we want to go. I had such a moment when I took a DNA test 3 years ago and discovered I wasn't half black, as I was raised to believe I was, but that I was half Jewish. This left me standing in front of the mirror, wondering who I was, wrestling with my frustration with my mother and my new biological family, and angry over everything that could have been. And I had feelings of being lost because so many things were beyond my control. Life had thrown a curveball in my journey. In order to move forward, I had to take a hard look at who I was and where I wanted to be. I had to give myself the grace to let go of the shame I felt for being an imposter as a biracial child and now felt as a Jew. I had to try and walk in my mother's shoes to understand her choices, so when I told her I forgave her, I truly did. I had to examine every choice I'd made in my life that brought me to that moment where I was staring at the mirror at this pinnacle time. I could have followed a path of staying in my pain and shame just as Jacob could have faced his brother with belligerence or haughtiness. Instead, Jacob wrestled with his demons, forgave himself, and found in his darkest moment the ability to let go and move forward in a positive way. Jacob is a new man with a new name, Israel, someone who has wrestled with God. Since we are created with a divine spark, that breath of God, as Rabbi Sachs said, I believe this means Jacob wrestled with himself that night. After his introspection, he chooses a path in meeting his brother that can lead to reconciliation. When we open ourselves to true introspection, this frees us to see and follow a humbler path, a path with opportunities so we can be better. I chose that path, a path to grow myself Jewishly and assist others who open Pandora's DNA box and find themselves standing before the mirror. This path has brought me more joy than I could have imagined. I found new friends, community, and have a much stronger insight into who I am.